This is a Fatal 4 podcast.
Eyes forward, gamers, and prepare to shuffle those feet from side to side. It's time for Squared Circle Strafe, the premier video game podcast of the Fatal 4 podcasting network. I am your host, Pro Wrestling Noah, aka Noah Stewart, and it is time to talk about video games. How's it going, folks? Welcome to the show. It's an exciting week here for me, or like weekend. Start of a month, really. It is, as of this recording, September 1st, which means for Pro Wrestling Noah, Halloween mode has been activated. That's right, I'm one of those people, I'm sorry. But I am so excited about Halloween every single year. I love watching just a huge catalog of, a huge schedule of horror movies and whatnot. Already have some stuff planned out to watch tonight. Already kind of kicked it off, honestly. I think it was on the 30th. Shudder had their The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs night marathon, where they showed I think 6 movies all in a row from dusk till dawn. I made it about halfway through, a little over halfway. I got about halfway through the 4th one, and then I was at around 3:30ish and ended up conking out a little around then because I had some stuff to do during the next day. I went and saw JPEG Mafia. That was awesome. I saw him for a second time when he came to town here the last time too with Danny Brown. That was a good concert too. But yeah, having an eventful Labor Day weekend here. Been really great. Hope you're having a great one too, or had one, depending on when you listen to this, when it gets released and whatnot. But yeah, having a good time. Hope you're having a good time. Why don't we talk about some potential good times as we talk about getting into the news here? A lot of stuff going on. Nintendo had their big duel showcase. They haven't really done one like this before. They had a Nintendo Indie World showcase immediately followed by a Nintendo Direct Partner showcase. They usually have these more separate, but they for whatever reason, I guess following, I guess it's Gamescom season now, because it seems like everyone's wanting to do a showcase to announce some more stuff recently. We'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, Nintendo Indie World, not a ton of stuff. It's I feel like it was a lot of stuff that we already knew about, maybe getting release dates or just reminding you that some stuff exists or that it's coming to the Switch. But there was some new stuff in this first, in the Indie World part of the showcase that was shown off. First off, we have a free update coming to Balatro. And this is not the one that I mentioned a couple weeks ago. I think there's a bigger, big content update coming in 2025. But this is a free update that is kind of a game partners thing that it's called Friends of Jimbo, and it's adding card skins and maybe some special abilities to those cards from different video game franchises. They got The Witcher, Wild Hunt, Vampire Survivors, Among Us, because Among Us ends up being in everything. Speaking of things that are in everything, Dave the Diver is also in this thing, which is different from I think last week during Gamescom announced that Balatro was coming to Dave the Diver. They're putting a Balatro mini game into Dave the Diver, but this is different in that now Dave the Diver is coming to Balatro with these it seems like they're putting these franchise specific skins onto the cards, and I'm talking the suits, the 52 card deck part of the cards, not the Jokers. But it also seems, judging by the trailer, it seems like there are maybe special abilities you can pop off by getting specific suits with the skin cards. I don't know. It looks pretty neat. I'm always down. I mean, I've played enough Balatro. I could play some more Balatro. I haven't played with all the decks yet, let's say, but hey, I feel like Balatro is variable enough. Like there's so much you can add to Balatro and get like fresh new experiences from it. So I'm looking forward to whatever. I feel like this game is going to have a lot of support, especially because I feel like it's been really successful. It's like a single dev team. It's like a single person dev team. And they have seen so much success from this thing. I'm sure that they'll like a kind of Stardew Valley situation. They'll want to update it for a while to, make sure people stick around, enjoy it, get other people, word of mouth, get friends to buy it and stuff too. So looking forward to more Balatro. Then they announced this thing called Moth Cubit, however you say this, coming from Helena Creative Studio. This looks like, the way it looks, it kind of reminds me of almost like a Undertale situation, but I don't think it's not an RPG. Or no, it is an RPG. It's kind of an RPG. It says it describes itself on the Steam page as this is an RPG about corporate life as an ordinary insect. Your protagonist, Moth Cubit, has just been promoted and all of a sudden embarks on a weird adventure in a megacorp to redeem or eradicate himself, his bug buddies, and the company before the mysterious final process arrives. And I say it looks kind of like Undertale in that like the kind of pixel art style is a little similar. It looks like it has a large variety of gameplay stuff happening, just like digital readouts. You got your little cell phone here. Like a lot of different mechanics thrown at you at different parts during the game. So it looks like, very narrative focused, but hey, that's, the story sounds neat. This looks like something I could get into. But it's also coming to Steam and Switch. Then they announced a new entry into the Coffee Talk franchise. Coffee Talk, if you're not familiar, is a like very chill kind of narrative game where you run a coffee shop and talk to patrons as they come in. They tell you about their lives. Just of, making coffee. It seems like a very, very cozy game. It's in that cozy game genre. Comes to you from developer Chorus Worldwide. And this is Coffee Talk Tokyo, which I feel like is pretty... It looks like Coffee Talk, but you're in Tokyo. You're talking to people there. You're talking to, previous Coffee Talk games. You're also talking to some kind of other creatures. Like it looks like there's like a little fox kid to talk to, like a Kappa that's a businessman. So it looks charming. I haven't played any of the Coffee Talk games, but I've always wanted to. I need to get into more cozy games. And speaking of a cozy game, depending on what kind of games you find cozy, we got Power Wash Simulator, which is a game. When did that come out? I think it came out 2022. I played it through Xbox Game Pass. Played pretty much all the content in the original release of it. Love Power Wash Simulator. Great podcast game. I haven't played any of the DLCs. I need to check to see if maybe the Final Fantasy VII DLC that they put out, that Final Fantasy VII DLC where you can power wash Cloud's bike. So I need to see if that's on Steam, because I don't have. Well, I guess I would have to buy a copy of it. But I've spent so much time with Power Wash Simulator. I feel like buying Power Wash, that's worth it. Anyways, in this direct, they announced the next DLC pack coming, and it is it's based on Shrek. You're going to Shrek's swamp, cleaning up his swamp. go to various other locations in the Shrek world and power wash those. I feel like we're about to hit a Shrek-assance in that they have like the new movie coming out soon. Gen Z loves Shrek. I just talked to my sister-in-law who just graduated college. She is a huge Shrek head. And hey, I would maybe call myself a Shrek head too. I watched that DVD a lot growing up. I watched the second one maybe once or twice. I don't think I've seen any of the other Shreks, but maybe I should. I don't know. Shrek fans, let me know if I should watch the other Shreks. I feel like I need to be prepared for this next one, so maybe I'll do a Shrek binge. I don't like the way that sounds coming out of my mouth. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. I'll let you know about the Shrek binge. I'll get back to you. Then they announced this. Speaking of gross stuff, actually, this next game called Morsels, coming from Furcula. Published by Annapurna Interactive, who does a lot of cool, neat indie stuff. Actually, we'll probably be talking about Annapurna a little bit later in this podcast. But this game, Morsels, this game looks cool. Like, this looks really gross and cool. It's on the Steam page, it describes itself as a fast-paced creature-collecting roguelite with a rotating roster of characters to switch between at will, overcoming a clique of killer cats as you fight your way through the sewers in this unique action-packed journey. The art style kind of reminds me of, if you've ever played Nidhogg 2, the like fencing, like two-player fencing fighting game. We're trying to like push each other to like, the other side of the screen, where you get eaten by a giant dragon, and it all just looks like really, it's pixelated, but like everything just has this like gross texture to it. A lot of goop and slime. This game specifically has a like pretty gnarly looking CRT filter over everything. Really great lighting. I love the way this thing looks. It looks like parts of it even has kind of a more 3D-ish kind of think like Clay Fighters kind of look to it. This is one I'm definitely going to have my eye on. This says it's coming out, release windows February 2025. Gameplay, the direct was neat because they had the developers on kind of doing these kind of explaining stuff about their dev process in between. That's really, I love the way Nintendo spotlights indies in that way for their indie world stuff. But they were saying that this started development as a kind of like bullet hell shoot 'em up kind of thing, and then it ended up turning into this. Honestly, the gameplay, it says it's roguelite, but it reminds me of, there was a game that came out, I think it was 2 years ago, called Nobody Saves the World. There was a kind of like Zelda dungeon game where you could switch between different classes and like character classes and creatures on the fly to have like different modes of combat and kind of Metroid style, or I guess Zelda style, access new areas with new abilities. And this kind of looks like that, where you can kind of on the fly switch between these different creatures with different abilities. But this is a roguelite version of that. I'm all for this. This is the out of everything that was announced during these two directs, this is one of the things I'm most excited about. So I'll be on the lookout for it in February. Speaking of things I'm very, very excited about. Okay, so we are now exiting the indie world part of this showcase and moving into the partner direct showcase. And they kicked this thing off strong with Digital Eclipse, the publisher known for doing these like very good, very high quality kind of like history deep dives into specific games, and having a real reverence for game history and preservation. They've done some stuff like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection. They put out, I believe they did the Castlevania collection, the Contra collection, just all these like collections of games, and making them available on newer hardware with like tons of scans of like art assets and like instruction books and stuff. And then they have their gold series, like Atari 50, the making of Karateka, the Jeff Minter collection of games, where they take these games and just like give them kind of a museum presentation, and then also combine them with these like very lengthy documentaries with like interviews with devs, kind of walking you through the history and like process of making the games. And the game they announced during this direct is probably one of the, I assume will be one of the more successful ones for them, because it is Tetris Forever. They are blowing out this huge, historic, awesome looking showcase for Tetris. They're bringing a ton of different Tetris games. A lot of them previously not available in the US. We have original Tetris for the NES. We have Hatris, just Tetris but with hats. Tetris 2, various versions of Bombliss, which I haven't played any Bombliss, but judging by gameplay, it looks like you play Tetris, but there'll be some Tetris blocks that have this little red circle in the middle that when you like clear a line with that little circle block, it blows up and takes some other of the cubes around it with it. The most exciting one from this collection that I'm personally most excited about is Tetris Battle Gaiden, which was a Japan-only game for the Super Nintendo that I learned about through Giant Bomb because they played it on like an episode of UPF or something, and which was like their like fun Friday show that they would do for people not familiar with Giant Bomb. But Tetris Battle Gaiden is the super cool kind of versus battle Tetris game where you are it's kind of the traditional two player Tetris situation where you are kind of like side by side on the screen playing Tetris at the same time, and as you clear lines you're sending junk to your opponent's side that they have to deal with, and it's been like making it harder and harder. Like the tower is getting closer and closer to the screen faster the more that your opponent is able to successfully clear lines. But in Tetris Battle Gaiden, you get to like kind of fighting game style pick a character that gives you special abilities that will like fuck with your opponent and either like send them more junk or send them like unclearable junk, like they have to clear lines multiple times before it actually disappears. Fun stuff like completely blacking out their screen except for the current Tetris block that you are controlling, so you kind of have to remember where all your stuff is in order to slot it in, which is very annoying. Stuff where you can clear large sections of your own board, kind of like setting off like a smart bomb and other like a shmup or something like that. But yeah, Tetris Battle Gaiden is awesome. I previously, to play it, I would have to like grab a ROM of it and put it on a Raspberry Pi so that I could take it to friends' houses and have little Tetris Battle Gaiden parties. That it's such a fun multiplayer game to play. Like instead of doing a night of Super Smash Brothers, you could have a night of Tetris Battle Gaiden and have just as much fun. It's so cool. And I'm so excited that it is coming to the Switch, a even easier way to bring that game to other places. And it's finally available in the US officially. It's so cool. I'm so excited. And of course, it's, Digital Eclipse, the Gold Series. So you're going to have tons of interviews with, people who created the game, helped bring it to the US. I'm sure that's going to be a big part of it because that traditionally has been a huge part of Tetris's history. They even made that movie. I think it came out last year for Apple TV Plus. Never saw it. I heard it was pretty good. Maybe not the most accurate, which, hey, it's a good thing that this is coming out because I'm sure this will be the most accurate. So Tetris Forever coming soon, 2025, I think. Pretty sure. No, it says 2024, actually. No specific month, no specific release date, but it's coming sometime this year. I really need to play the rest of those Gold Series games. Those games I've looked at. I actually own Tetris, or not Tetris. I own the Atari 50 collection. Really need to dig into those. I love that kind of game preservation history stuff. Can't wait. And also, I have like for Atari specifically, I have a big kind of soft spot in my heart because I used to have those Jack specific plug and play little devices where you could play like 50, or maybe not 50, like 20 Atari games for like the 2600. And also I inherited a Atari 5200 growing up. So I have like a decent affinity for Atari. So I really need to dig into that. Then they announced a game called Star Overdrive, which I thought was kind of interesting to announce here on like the partner showcase, because this kind of looks like fun little indie game. You're like a dude on a hoverboard, kind of go around like in a big planet open world fighting monsters. I don't know. It looks neat, if not maybe a little slight. I don't know. They didn't show a lot of specifics about gameplay. This looks, just by looking at this, it looks like it could end up coming out as like a solid 7, which is fine. There need to be more of those kinds of games. Then they do, on both of these showcases, they had these very quick, like, hey, let's just kind of like blitz through a bunch of games, not really talk about them, but just like kind of show that, hey, like these games are here and they exist, and then move on and start talking about something else. During that one of those segments, for whatever reason, I feel like this should have gotten some talking points, but they showed footage for The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, the first, which is kind of a big deal. Like, RPG fans love the Legend of Heroes Trails series, but it's a franchise that has like all these spin-off series, but you really want to start from the beginning because it's a like long, very involved story with like a lot of world building and specific callbacks to characters and stuff. In the first game, I believe came to the US initially as a PSP game, and it's available on Steam. Usually goes on sale for like $10. I really just need to pick it up, but it's like a pretty lengthy, like 50-hour game, but is a like kind of like sprite based like RPG strategy game, like kind of tactics game. And they showed the footage for this apparent like remake. I'd say it's more of a remake because it looks like it's going to have like a very clean 3D style, more like the recent Trails or Legend of Heroes Trails games that have been coming out, which is super cool and exciting. It looks like a great place for new people to jump on, and I don't know why they didn't talk about this thing, but hey, there's that. They also announced a new SpongeBob SquarePants game, the Patrick Star game, which it seems like they've been ramping up production on these things. They did that remaster of the Battle for Bikini Bottom game, and then came out with, I believe, the Cosmic Shake, which is kind of like a spiritual successor to that game. And this looks very similar to that style of SpongeBob action platformer, like kind of like 3D collectathon kind of thing, but you play as Patrick this time. So fans of SpongeBob SquarePants video games, here you go. Okay, here's the big news, folks. This is the thing that I feel like most people were really jazzed and excited about coming out of this thing. So a while ago, they announced I believe it was at Summer Games Fest, they announced the Capcom Fighting Collection for Marvel vs. Capcom, which, a new, very accessible way to play that and able to play it online is very, very cool. And then they announced the Capcom Fighting Collection 2, which has the Capcom vs. SNK games, Capcom vs. SNK Pro and Capcom vs. SNK 2, Mark of the Millennium 2001, which I think is the thing that most people or like hardcore fighting fans, I should say, are very excited about, because it also has the Capcom Fighting Evolution, which I've heard is not that amazing. It comes with Street Fighter Alpha 3 Upper, which I think is like the kind of like the Rainbow Edition, I guess you could say, like the version that like most people want with like the most updated stuff about it. And then it comes with Power Stone 1 and 2. Dreamcast fans pop off. And Project Justice and Plasma Sword. That is a very good collection of games, because they've done this initial Capcom Fighting Collection before, and from what I remember, it just mostly has a ton of Darkstalkers games on it, which is cool. But I feel like a lot of the Darkstalkers games play very similarly. In this, I feel like the variety of stuff on the second collection is this is going to be one of the best releases for these like Capcom collection of games that they do, and it looks awesome. I very much considering getting this. A couple more things. They announced a new Atelier game. Atelier being the like kind of alchemy JRPG series. This one looks like it might be closer to the Ryza series, with like very good looking modern 3D graphics, very character focused. Hey, if you like Atelier, here's more of it. Exciting news, more news for JRPG fans. We finally are getting some actual concrete news about the long rumored Suikoden 1 and 2 HD remaster. It looks like the subtitle for this is Gate Rune and Dunen Unification Wars. Which I guess if you're a Suikoden fan, that probably means something to you. I have not played any of the Suikoden games, but hey, I've always heard they're very good, so this will probably get me to play. I've always wanted to play the Suikoden games. They sound pretty intimidating with the from what I understand, what makes Suikoden unique is that they have these huge roster of characters that you can like swap out for your party. Like I'm talking like, something like 30 different characters that you can make all these different party combinations with. So that sounds neat. Looking forward to that coming early next year. Looks like they already have a release date of March 6th for 2025. More JRPG news. The Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake that we've heard about before, but they have a solid release date now of November 14th, and it's coming to Switch. I've not played this. I played Dragon Quest 1, I think, on my phone, and that's like the most of a Dragon Quest that I've played. But I hear that the 3 is one of the best ones, and this is the most accessible that it's been in the US, I think. And this Square Enix has been doing really good with this 2D HD style, popularized in the Octopath Traveler games, which Paul Griffin over on the Didn't Get All of It podcast can probably tell you about that. He seems very excited about those games. Shout out to Paul. He's probably listening. Hello, Paul. Happy birthday. But yeah, I mean, I'm always down for a JRPG, so this looks exciting. Then more collection news. Konami, you can say a lot about Konami making decisions, usually not good ones, but something they do really well is putting out these Castlevania collections. They've put out one for the original NES games. They've put out ones for the Game Boy Advance Castlevanias, and now they're moving on to the DS era with Castlevania Dominus Collection, where you get Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, Castlevania Portrait of Ruin, Castlevania Order of Ecclesia, and it looks like they're putting out releases of Haunted Castle, which I think is like a arcade game version of Castlevania, which is pretty neat. They're including that as well. And it's interesting because it's the DS, right? But they're releasing it on Switch. But it looks like they kind of, I'm sure they had to kind of think about it, how they were going to port it. But it looks like you have the top screen, which is where most of the action is happening, because it's, like a side-scrolling Metroidvania thing. That takes up most of the screen, but then they have a good, I would say maybe like 30% portion of the screen to the right that's dedicated to showing you the map of the area that you're in, and the bottom screen that has like all the like character stats and stuff, and I'm sure will be used for some of the stuff. Like I think Dawn of Sorrow, where you had to like touch the screen to like affect stuff in the level. Very cool. The people are very excited about this. Huge news for Castlevania fans. And then it was funny because they showed, for whatever reason, they probably shouldn't have, but they showed footage for the Switch version of Sid Meier's Civilization 7. And boy, does it look like ass on the Switch. They could have not done this. Someone should have told them to not do this. But boy, does like everything, just like even in the showcase, it looked like the frame rate was bad. The textures were all washed out. Like they shouldn't have done that. So I mean, if you play Civ on the Switch, Godspeed. I mean, having it portable is nice, but if you have a Steam Deck, that's probably a better way to play it. But hey, it's coming to Switch, so. Then they announced a remaster for Tales of Graces F, which is, I like these Tales. I've played Tales of the Abyss and Tales of Vesperia, and I like the Tales games. These kind of like very action heavy JRPGs. I hadn't played Graces F. I think this is the first one that came to PS3. This one looks like it's kind of like one of the more anime ones, and I mean that in that like the characters look, compared to even other Tales games, extremely colorful. All different variations of hair colors and styles and whatnot. But I think this is one of the good ones from what I remember. I think like most of the PS3, Xbox 360 generation of those were good ones. So yeah, Tales fans got a new updated version of this game coming. And then I was talking about the Gen Z and their Shrek a little bit ago. We got another Gen Z release here with My Sims Cozy Bundle. This was like, the Sims were really popping off in the mid-aughts, and this was like a series of Wii games, My Sims, where it's like these little chibi versions of the Sims, and you could like, build your house, but also go out into town. I think you like directly controlled your Sim, and honestly, it kind of looks closer to like an Animal Crossing situation where you're like going out and talking to people. You can, like tend your garden and whatnot. But again, this is just my experience talking to people who from Gen Z, but my sister-in-law, I believe, was very, very into these games. So a new, very accessible way to play those. Then we got a new entry in the Rune Factory series. But this one looks really different because like Rune Factory traditionally has been it is billed itself as Harvest Moon, but sci-fi, and like you could do like dungeon crawling, a little bit more action focused, like JRPG, but with farming. And where previous versions of it were very sci-fi based, this one seems more fantasy based. Like it's going back to kind of feudal era Japan, and there's magic and dragons and samurai. I just think it's really neat that they're kind of going for this different style for the Rune Factory games. So farming fans, here's another one, but a very cool, different kind of one of these. And then they decided to end this thing off with their one more thing was, hey, Yakuza Kiwami is coming to the Switch. Which, yeah, like I like Yakuza. There's maybe different, better ways to play this game, but I mean, like some people only have the Switch, and I feel like, hey, like Yakuza is a great game, and any way you can play it is a good way. And also, like the Yakuza series, in at least like when Kiwami came out, it wasn't a. It came out during like the PS4 generation, and it wasn't a particularly amazing looking game then. So I feel like it will probably translate to the Switch pretty well. So Yakuza Kiwami coming to the Switch. And that's it for all of the Nintendo announcements. A pretty like decent little slate of stuff coming out of that. Kind of some new releases, some stuff we already knew about, but getting some new release dates. So pretty decent little, like I would give it like a B-, let's say, if I were to give that whole showcase, like dual showcase, a grade. Well, hey, I got a little bit more news here, but why don't we take a quick break and we come back, we'll finish off the news, and I'll tell you about some of the stuff I've been playing. And we're back, folks. And finishing off this news, I actually just, as I was taking that break, it looks like we got some breaking news coming through here. Wario64 on Twitter has posted that apparently the Tony Hawk Pro Skater page on Twitter has updated their accounts with like some new art and for its 25th anniversary. I don't know. It could just be like a 25th anniversary, just like, hey, here's like a little special, presentation for our socials. But I would be really hopeful that they're maybe cooking something. I've always been very upset that they came out with that 1 and 2 remake and then just like shuffled the Vicarious Visions as a support studio to work on Diablo. But if they somehow are working on that 3 and 4 remake, that would be the best. But let's get into some of the other news we have going on here. Foam Stars, Square Enix's Foam Stars is going free to play, which that's probably the correct move for them. Foam Stars is their kind of like their like Splatoon being the Nintendo game where you're squid kids and shooting ink at each other. In this game, instead it's foam. You're kind of skating around the foam. I remember this game came out, and I believe it was available for free to PlayStation Plus subscribers. And even then, I don't think it had like a terribly big following. So I'm wondering if we'll maybe see an influx of new players for this free-to-play version of it. And we'll kind of get into that whole situation later. The whole games as service thing that's happening in the industry right now. But hey, Foam Stars, it's free now if you want to give it a shot. And then, speaking of video game showcases, like we were talking about earlier in the show, the PlayStation State of Play is expected to happen late next month, this month in September. And specifically, this is a State of Play. So PlayStation has their like big annual showcase that they do, where they will announce new first-party titles, and then they have the State of Play, which is kind of their like lower stakes, like third-party people coming in to maybe announce some stuff, maybe just tell you about some stuff that you already know about, but with release dates and stuff like that. So, but I think what most people are expecting to see at this thing will probably be the PlayStation 5 Pro announcement. We've already been seeing some of that stuff bubbling up. Like someone did like a sketch, I think, of what the PlayStation 5 Pro will look like. And I'm hoping that this will be something that will just really be for like that hobby grade player who just like wants their games to look like a little bit better, maybe get a little bit more performance out of it, because they did this pro model thing with the PS4, and I felt like by the end of that console's life cycle, it really started to hurt being like a base model owner that didn't have one of the like pro models. Like I remember just Control, like Remedy's Control, just running like dog shit on that thing. Just like whenever you got into heavy combat, it would go down to like 15 frames a second. Like it would just like almost unplayable stability on that thing. So I'm really hoping that as we get, later in the PlayStation 5's life cycle, that they are still able to like develop games to run well on base models. Like hopefully they've kind of learned their lessons from their first go around with the PS4 Pro models, and are able to just like make this like be a nice thing for people who want more performance out of their games, but aren't necessarily hurting the people that have the base models and feel like it's kind of required to upgrade to play later games coming out in the catalog. Then for some unfortunate news, it looks like things just keep getting worse at Bungie. This is being reported on by Jason Schreier from Bloomberg, saying that former kind of like one of the bigger leaders at Bungie, Chris Barrett, has suddenly left the company. Apparently was fired sometime in the spring due to an HR investigation that it's held that he maybe behaved inappropriately to at least 8 female employees, which, it's always unfortunate. Hopefully, everyone affected is doing all right and is, we'll get some, justice from these investigations. But man, Bungie's really having a hard time lately with the layoffs that happened last month. A lot of their, projects either, getting shot down or being moved to other stuff. Sony invested so much in buying Bungie, and decisions because of them have kind of like shot that investment in the foot. And now there's stuff like this coming out about leadership. Like just, it's unfortunate times for Bungie, but also like Bungie, I feel like is not really, I think a lot of the people that, Bungie probably most famous for making Halo, they did Halo and Destiny. And I feel like a lot of the people that made Halo, probably, I think a decent amount of them left around the time that Destiny was kind of nearing the end of its development. But yeah, Bungie, man. Hopefully we're going to see better days soon, but they're having a rough 2024. But for some more chipper news, coming from themselves, Remedy and Annapurna announced that they're going to be in a strategic cooperation agreement for Control 2 and also bringing Control and Alan Wake to film and television. So the cool thing about Annapurna as a developer is that they, publish a lot of cool indie games. And I feel like Annapurna is kind of like the A24 of video games, if that makes sense. They have like these really, like highly curated, very, like kind of critically acclaimed games that they put out. But also the video games arm of their whole publishing business is just one part of them, because they also do stuff with like film and television. So that's the exciting part about this, is that I feel like Annapurna is super cool. They are usually very good at, being collaborators. And Remedy like the ability to own their IP and really, do whatever they want with it has always been very precious to them. And according to this, it looks like they will finance 50% of the development budget for the upcoming Control 2, and they will gain the rights to Annapurna will gain the rights to expand the Control and Alan Wake franchises to film and television, and Remedy will receive a greater revenue share from game sales after the initial investments have been recouped, proportional to the amounts invested. Conversely, Annapurna will receive greater revenue share from audiovisual productions. So it really just feels like a win-win for like both sides of this, kind of able to get what they want out of it. And I think the part of this that I'm really hoping for is that Remedy has already, they do a lot of, kind of like FMV stuff in their games using real actors and like camera shot footage over the game. So they already have actors playing these characters in these franchises that Annapurna wants to bring to film and television. I really just hope that they use those actors that they already have. Because it will, visually be more, continuity, but also just because I want those actors to get paid. They've already put so much work and effort into establishing those characters, and I hope they get to keep doing that and also compensated for doing more of it. So we'll see how that part shakes out. But this initial announcement of this endeavor sounds very promising and very cool. And then this last bit of news that I personally am very excited about. I don't know how many people will be as excited as me, but Argonaut Games has announced that they are going to be doing a remaster of Croc Legend of the Gobos, the PS1 3D platformer, very like animals with googly eyes. Kind of think I always thought of Croc as kind of the PS1's answer to Banjo-Kazooie, if that makes sense. But it's kind of it's a little less open world maybe than Banjo-Kazooie. It's these kind of like, sectioned off levels that are not like super linear. You can kind of run around them, but it has very specific places within the levels that you're kind of going, and there's boss fights. But this, I didn't have an N64 growing up. I only had a PlayStation 1. So, and I for whatever reason, I didn't have Crash Bandicoot. I didn't have Spyro. I think one of my friends had Spyro, but for whatever reason, the character platformer that I chose was Croc and the Legend of the Gobos. So I have a very deep nostalgia for this game, and I'm so excited that they're updating it, bringing it to new consoles. The footage from this trailer looks gorgeous. It doesn't look like the kind of remake treatment that was given to Crash and Spyro a few years ago, where they completely redid the textures, and Crash Bandicoot kind of had his furry textures, and Spyro looked a little more scaly. This just looks like it. All the textures look similar to the PlayStation 1, but just really smoothed out. It just looks like you're playing the original game, but it's a little more aesthetically pleasing with smoothed out textures and kind of some of the washed out the ways the PS1 games textures can kind of look a little bit washed out. It looks a little more colorful. But it looks like largely the lighting has been left intact. It looks like they're treating this thing with a lot of respect. So very, very happy that they're doing this. Yazoo to all my fellow Croc heads. We're finally getting our game. But that is all of the news I have for you. Kind of a big week of news there. But speaking of games I'm excited to play, let me tell you what I've been playing lately. I spent a lot of time with Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip, which is a game that came out earlier this year on Steam that I would describe as a kind of like if someone made a GTA, a cartoony GTA game for the GameCube. It's like you're this little guy named Terry. You're a kid who your parents left at home for summer vacation. They went off on summer vacation, and you have to do summer school. But you're not going to do summer school. You want to have summer vacation, so you go get a job driving a taxi, but not actually doing the like taxi driver part of the job. You get the job just so you can get a car, so that you can go to space. is the premise. But it's like a really cool kind of open world where they don't really give you much direction besides get Terry to space. And you get to talk to a bunch of fun characters. The humor is actually very, very good. We were talking, a couple weeks ago about how it's like really hard to do intentionally funny video games. It feels like a lot of the time. Like, Thank Goodness You're Here was a great example of like an intentionally funny game that pulled it off really well. I feel like this is really doing that too. But like the main you learn it as you play, but the main thing you're trying to do is that there is these little collectibles you can pick up throughout the world called turbo junk, and you turn that turbo junk into the mechanic, which gives you more boost capacity on your car, on your little taxi cab. And there is this big structure in the center of town that goes all the way up into the sky and has like roads on each side, and you are trying to build up enough boost on your car so that you boost it off of that huge structure into space. And to do that, you go on these little quests through these characters that you meet in the world, and it's a bunch of really fun, very charming characters. Like there's a girl at the employment office that Terry has a little crush on, but you're really bad at flirting with her. There is a guy sunbathing on the beach that you like talk to, and you're like, hey, like it looks like you might be having a little bit of a sunburn going on there. And the objective just tells you to occasionally check up on him, and he's getting more and more burned to a comedic level throughout the game. And there's also like you have your rival Ricky, who also has a car that has boost capacity, and you kind of get in little duels with him. It's very just so much charm everywhere. It's also a very like kind of compact game. It takes about 4.5 hours to play. The map feels big, but not too big to where you kind of get like pretty familiar with everything as you're kind of carting around. I had a blast with this thing, man. And I say that it feels kind of like a GameCube game, and just that it's like a very focused game, but also like it has a very cartoony art style. The platforming is solid. It's just, I had a ton of fun with this thing, man. Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip. I feel like it has a decent chance of getting on to my top 10. I feel very positively on it. Then the other game I would say I spent a lot of time this week with is actually not a recent release. It's an older release, but with, I would say, like a cult following. I played Mirror's Edge again. This is maybe my third time playing Mirror's Edge. I played it specifically because another video game podcast I love listening to, the Min-Max Show, they have a side series that they do called The Deepest Dive, where they say it's the biggest, most thorough discussion you can have on a video game. It's kind of like a book club, but for video games, where they'll have multiple episodes talking about specific areas of the game. And the next one they're about to start doing is for Mirror's Edge. So I thought I'd play it again. And Mirror's Edge is interesting because it came out during the time that EA was really invested in either signing on new developers or having in-house developers take chances on new IP, an exciting different IP, like because they had Mirror's Edge, they had Dead Space. They were doing, I think that's like around the time that Dragon Age and Mass Effect were really coming into their own. You had stuff like Skate, just all of this like cool, unique properties coming out of EA. And Mirror's Edge was developed by DICE, who at the time was mostly, I mean, like at the time and now they mostly make Battlefield games, but like EA gave them a chance to kind of make a new thing. And Mirror's Edge, if you've never played it, is a very cool like first-person parkour game. And it was very novel at the time. And actually, the first way I played it was not on the PS3, which was like my main console during that generation, but it was on PC through the OnLive service, which, if you never heard of it, was kind of like, Google Stadia. Just kind of like Google's attempt at, hey, you don't necessarily need a console to play video games. You can stream this video game through the internet, like we're playing it on a server that we have locally, but your inputs are going to it in real time as you're playing it on like a browser or just like your monitor. And OnLive was kind of like the first version of that happened in like the late aughts. And my dad worked for like various cell phone companies that would buy each other, eventually TNT, wrestling on the brain, AT&T. And through his job, he was able to get me into the beta testing for OnLive. And mostly the game I played through that was Mirror's Edge. And Mirror's Edge is it's cool, man. Like I feel like I think the game that most kind of took inspiration from Mirror's Edge, at least in mobility, was Dying Light, the zombie survival game from the Dead Island devs, but it was basically just like Dead Island, but with more like parkour-ish maneuverability. And I really liked Mirror's Edge at the time. And I feel like every time I play Mirror's Edge, I like it a little less, which is really unfortunate. I think it's hasn't aged super well. It's still like visually, I think it still looks gorgeous. Maybe the cutscenes, like the animated cutscenes, haven't aged that well. I remember them looking really good at the time, but honestly, they don't look amazing now. But graphically, like I think the art style is super solid. It's kind of still going for a realistic look for like as far as people, but the color palette of the city itself, this kind of like glossy futuristic city, still looks really cool. But the thing about the gameplay is that the parkour is still really fun, controls well. It feels the coolest when you are outside, kind of like going across the rooftops. And it even it feels cool when you're, bursting through a door and running through the hallway inside of a building and then bursting out through another door to keep, running real fast over the rooftops. But there'll be large sections of the game where it has you, go through a sewer or like a big building where you're just mostly going through hallways, where it feels like outside you have a lot of creativity to kind of chart your own path over the rooftops, but inside it's very linear. There's like one thing you're supposed to do, and sometimes you're able to kind of predict like, oh, like to get to that pipe I obviously have to run on this wall to get there or something. But sometimes you'll just get to a dead end and just kind of have to look around going, okay, where do I go next? And that can be a little frustrating. And also there are enemies in this game, and I guess because it's DICE and they're mostly known for Battlefield, they wanted to have some gunplay in it, and it's honestly the worst part of this whole game is the gun. The guns don't feel good to shoot, and especially when you're outside and they have you in these like little enemy encounters. Sometimes it wants you to run away, and sometimes there are specific parts where it really wants you to like plant your feet and like take someone down, unarm them, and then shoot all the guys. And it just doesn't feel good. I think there is like an achievement for that. It is possible to get through the whole game without killing anyone, without like shooting anyone with guns. But I've never done that, and I think some parts of the game just feel like it really comes down to luck if you're going to make it out of an encounter without getting shot to death. Because these guys are the enemies in the game are really good at just nailing you from across the map. But I'm still very charmed by Mirror's Edge. I don't know. It's still the story. I feel like I never quite know what's going on in Mirror's Edge. I enjoy a lot of the themes of the story with, like, this city that is like very gentrified, very, clean and glossy, but is really only able to be lived in by the rich and powerful. And everyone else is, kind of either being killed or pushed, out of this society. And you play as a runner who is a courier that is delivering information that cannot be traced because it's not being communicated through computers. It's being handed off physically through these runners. But I feel like you're really never told who your clients are, like who you are delivering this message for, because most of the narrative is just around your sister, who is a cop, who is being framed for a crime of killing the mayor of the town or of the city, and now the cops are after you. And that part of it is, like, honestly not that interesting. But like Mirror's Edge, it's still so cool, still so unique. It has a very special like part in that era of games. And I have not played Catalyst, the sequel that came out during like the PS4 Xbox One generation. And I've heard from people who enjoy the original Mirror's Edge that it's maybe not, it's like different, and it's maybe not as good. I think it's a little longer too. I think one of the complaints of the original Mirror's Edge was that it was too short. Like, it took me about 4.5 hours, I think, to finish it this time. And Catalyst might be closer to like something like 8 to 10 hours, I think. I think it has like a little bit more of an open world thing going on than the very linear structure of Mirror's Edge. But overall, like, hey, I'd probably play Mirror's Edge again. There's just like some specific sections where it gets a little sticky and you have to redo it over and over again because you keep dying to these weird enemy encounters. But the parts where Mirror's Edge is good, it's really good. Then the last game I spent a decent amount of time with this week was Star Wars Outlaws, newly released. I got to play it this past Friday, which as of this recording was like 2 days ago. I've only played about 2 hours of it. It hasn't really opened up yet, so I can't really say I've gotten the full experience yet. But just from the opening sections, I feel like the Star Wars part of it is very good. Just the immersion. I feel very immersed in the world. Just all of the settings of it. It feels like a very lived-in world. You start on Canto Bight, the casino planet from The Last Jedi, which everyone loves that. But I really love it. You can get mad at me; it's fine. But I really like that setting. I just got to, I guess, the second planet. Played some Sabacc, the card, the card game in Star Wars. They actually let you play some of that in here. It feels kind of like a light version of poker, where you're trying to get a pair of cards, but have it be like the lowest pair, and it has like a really good betting mechanic. I don't know. I'll definitely play more Sabacc. And the way that they have Sabacc set up kind of feels like Queen's Blood in the Final Fantasy Rebirth that came out earlier this year, where when you go to different towns, there will be different Sabacc challenges to do. probably getting you like more money, maybe some resources. But as far as like the like more standard parts of the gameplay, it's very stealth focused. I feel like, for judging by trailers, maybe the stealth wasn't as prominent in like kind of what you're doing from moment to moment. You do get yourself into shootouts, but the shootouts maybe don't feel as survivable. Maybe I think there's also going to be a mechanic, at least from what I've heard. There's going to be a mechanic where if you go loud during an encounter, then maybe like your reputation goes down because you were supposed to deal with it subtly, quieter. But I haven't gotten to that part of the game yet. I can't really speak to that, but I'm enjoying the opening sections of it so far. I've texted some with Paul Griffin from the Didn't Get All of It podcast. He seems to be really enjoying it. I'll probably have him on an episode later, maybe, to talk about our experiences with the game as we get a little deeper into it. That'll be fun. But yeah, I'm looking forward to spending more time with Star Wars Outlaws. Hopefully sometime soon here. I mean, it's the Labor Day weekend. I'll probably be able to play a lot more of it tomorrow, and I'm hopefully going to spend a lot more time with it this week, kind of get through it, because just right around the corner here is Astrobot coming to PS5, and I'm definitely going to be wanting to play a lot of that because, man, it's so rare that we get a really high quality, very good character platform game, like 3D platformer game, not from Nintendo in this day and age. And it's so exciting that first party Sony is providing that. And I'm very excited about that game. So that's what I've been playing. But why don't we take another quick break here, and we'll come back with our third segment. All right, welcome back, folks, and it is now time for our third segment of the show. It's time for the Strafe Shuffle. And for this week's Strafe Shuffle, I thought I would talk about it seems like there has been a conversation popping up this week, specifically around the release of Concord, about live service games, and kind of how I feel like there's kind of a crisis going on with live service games, because this thing, Concord, a first party Sony hero shooter. If you haven't seen it or heard of it, basically think Overwatch, but more like space. Like kind of like that first trailer that they showed during Summer Games Fest had really heavy Guardians of the Galaxy vibes. But the thing about this is that it's a hero shooter, and it just seems like Overwatch. Like the gameplay, like the game modes, it has like like capture the point and push the point, some just like very standard mission types for that. And also the thing about it is that I feel like it's a games of service, but it's premium in that I think it's $40 to buy into this thing. And I guess the cool part of that is that it's kind of guaranteed to be supported. It'll come with, like, if you're buying the game, it'll come with free updates. You can of course put more money into it to buy skins and other aesthetic stuff. But also the kind of big selling point, the thing that makes Concord unique, is that it would have these narrative cutscenes that I think we're supposed to release every week. It would have this ongoing narrative to kind of push the story forward, which in concept sounds cool, but also is maybe, I don't know, for most people not enough to come to this new game. Because you would think that, it's this hero shooter genre, and most people who are into that genre are already playing Overwatch And like, honestly, maybe some people have, dropped off of Overwatch, but maybe wanted a new hero shooter to check out. And maybe those people are interested in Concord. But if you're looking at the player metrics, it seems like not a ton of people are playing Concord right now. It kind of just really seems like a disaster from launch, which is really unfortunate considering apparently how much Sony has put into the marketing for this game. Because it looks, fidelity-wise, it looks really good. But I think the thing that is really difficult for it is that the thing about Overwatch is that the character designs were really, really strong. It was like very flashy, very like characters that people could latch onto very quickly. You could just really tell what the character's whole deal was just by giving them a glance. And I feel like that is not so much the case for Concord. And a lot of people, I think, were not really taken by the dialogue, especially in that initial release trailer or announcement trailer. And I feel like it's just kind of like Foam Stars. It might have to go free to play at some point just to get some kind of refreshed player base into this thing. Because, coming out at this premium price to buy into it, I kind of see where they're coming from, because you could get the financial support to be able to do these free updates, but it's really hard to get people in the door, because I believe when Overwatch first launched, it was like that, where it was like a $40 product that you had to buy into, and then of course you could buy chests that had skins and hats and stuff in it. But it did eventually go free to play, and I believe Overwatch 2 is free to play now. And I feel like Sony especially is hurting from this games as service situation that we've kind of found ourselves in, where I feel like a lot of the types of games that these executives want is games of service that people come to week after week. They play it over long periods of time and are putting money into it, maybe on a weekly basis, from a time to time basis, to get hats and other stuff. But the thing that we find ourselves in is that a lot of these games of service stuff, there's not a lot of space for it in the industry. A lot of people are playing Fortnite, and when you're playing Fortnite, there's not really a lot of time to play other games of service. You choose your one and you stick with it. And I feel like it's really hard to peel people off of other games to come to your game. And in Sony's case, they're putting out a lot of these. They had Concord, and then they also have Marathon, which is coming from Bungie, which is a first, as of this, is a first party studio. And I think Hyenas was coming to PS5. I don't know. I feel like there's just a lot of there's a lot of investment in games of service, and some of them are even shutting down before they come out. I don't know. I feel like something is going to have to give eventually, and people are just going to. I feel like the audience has started to really reject this, this model of delivery of games, because they've already chosen the ones they want to play. And there's just we are seeing a lot of games either die or shortly after coming out, or just in development. I don't know. It's a complicated problem, but I feel like we're kind of at a breaking point where the ones that are around will stick around, and hopefully people higher up at publishers who make these decisions will see that, you had, what was it? Black Myth Wukong was a huge success. And I know a lot of that, has to do with the Chinese audience, just really showing up for that game. But China also is the culture with video games there is very much there. A lot of the success is found through games of service, but Black Myth Wukong is a single player game, and it is wildly successful. So, and I know there's a much bigger kind of culture war thing happening on Twitter conversation that I really don't want to get into because it's very exhausting. I think it's all very stupid, but that is an example, I think, of like a single player game that has seen wild success. And I think companies are very scared to invest in these single player games, but there is still like a very big audience that wants those kinds of games. Look at Spider-Man 2, that like sold immensely, and granted the budget on it was ridiculous. So they maybe did not see a big enough return on that to feel totally satisfied with it. But I don't know, something's got to give with how big games budgets are getting versus the style to which they want to deliver them, whether that be single player or multiplayer or games of service. But it's just something we're gonna kind of have to feel out. That was just some thoughts I wanted to get out about that whole situation for games as service. But that I'll leave it at that for now. But thank you so much for listening to this episode of Squared Circle Strafe. You can leave us a nice review on Apple Podcasts if you like the show. You can follow me on Twitter at OozyNeon. If you want to catch more of me talking about some really nerdy stuff, you can follow the Didn't Get All of It podcast to hear me and the rest of the Fatal 4 hosts talk about the latest and greatest in professional wrestling. You can also sign up for our Patreon to get exclusive access to our Discord, as well as bonus podcast content and the satisfaction of supporting independent podcasting media. Head to patreon.com/Fatal4Pod. That's Fatal, F-O-U-R Pod. Thank you again for listening, and as always, enjoy your gaming.